What's up, everybody? Jared from Coasters here. Stacy will not be with us today. She's been a little bit busy, but if you're missing her, don't you worry. She will be back to the channel as soon as possible. Today, we're going to get into some of the Cedar Fair changes coming for 2024. Now, in 2023, Kingsdominion, Carowinds, and California's Great America announced year-round operations. It seems to be a one and done. Now, the one that doesn't really surprise me is Kingsdominion. Being in Doswell, Virginia, it's still a little bit chilly, and the limited ride selections, all of that, it kind of makes sense why people wouldn't want to just drive out there. I didn't go in the winter because it was cold and I wanted to ride all of the rides. Carowinds, a little more iffy. I feel like that one definitely could have worked if there was a little more marketing or something going into that one, or events or festivals. But the one that really shocks me is California's Great America in Santa Clara, California. Beautiful sunny weather all the time. Now, I get it, limited ride closures, you could have done that, but let's go ahead and get into this, guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Boom. I'm gonna go ahead and go over the obvious reasons next. Now, maintenance being a major thing here. The teams at Kingsdominion, Carowinds, and California's Great America were left with short periods of time trying to, take apart trains for certain coasters, rebuild coaster trains, do all the maintenance checks in the off season, and basically get everything prepped for the 2024 season. They are very used to being able to do that. So going with the all-year operations and running one train on things makes it a little more difficult because it's stagnant layered time frames, you know what I mean? It just turns into one of those big clusters where you're just like, when are we going to actually get this done? Because we're doing it all in phases now. It was something new, so I kind of understand from the maintenance standpoint why this might have been a nightmare and why you might have wanted to move away from it. Now, the second major thing would be the limited ride selection. Personally, I didn't go to Kingsdominion during the winter time last year for one specific reason, and that was because I wanted to ride all the rides, and I've never been there before, so I'm not going to go get a limited selection and then see all the other ones and not be able to ride them. I'm not sure how many other people felt the same way who have never been, and I can't really tell you how the people who go all the time felt about it, but I know one thing's for sure. When half the rides or more are down, most people don't have a good day, even if it's not busy, because you want to ride more than a few things at a time. So basically what it turned into from my perspective is when you do these year-round events, right? Once you go once, you don't need to go back. And maybe that's what some of the locals were feeling. They went once, the limited rides, they got their action, and they could hold off until things were open again. And I'm sure maybe some of them went twice or three times, you know what I mean, but they weren't getting the crowds that they were looking for, and that makes sense when most of the park is expected to not be open. But that goes back to the maintenance thing as well. As a guest, you kind of have to understand that a lot of things can't be open when they're trying to do their maintenance routines, and it just turns into one of those like, but, and then you wind up just not going because if you wait a few weeks or a few months that you're going to get all of the rides, more than likely, barring the occasional rides being down, etc. But you're going to get a better experience during the spring than trying to go in the wintertime with one trains and limited operations, and it just turns into one of those things. You don't want to go and waste your time. Totally understandable and fair. But how could they have changed that? We'll get into that in a little bit here, but I'm going to go ahead and break down another reason why this may not have worked. Going back to the location for Kingsdominion, it kind of makes sense because they're pretty close to the Midwest. I know they're a little bit out, but the weather isn't much different there. It's chilly, it's wet, and it's pretty cold most of the time. So I would understand why people wouldn't want to go even for their weekend trips. Carowinds makes a little bit less sense. I know they can get down in the 40s there, but they don't normally get the wet winters as much as like the Midwest does. So they have plenty of ample opportunity to run rides there above the 40-degree mark. And for me, that's like, right in the sweet spot. If it's like 40 to 50 degrees, double hoodies up, and it's a great time in those parks. I don't know why California's Great America. This doesn't explain California's Great America, why they wouldn't. I'm pretty sure this is just for routine maintenance and everything else and not wasting a whole bunch of the profits going into operations of a park that isn't bringing in the troves of people. Understandable again. Cedar Fair, I understand why you're making these moves in some cases, but I also think there could have been some things that were done different. This goes back to Carowinds directly. In the Charlotte area, in the greater Charlotte area, you see more Dollywood signs there than you do for Carowinds. So even the locals aren't seeing it. They're seeing Dollywood. And it's like, they're not even thinking about Carowinds at that point because it's not being put in their face all the time. And I kind of understand it to a point, but festivals, maybe just try some sort of festival. Shoot, even for like Valentine's Day, you could have done a lover's lane type of thing, anything to try to get couples in the park. I mean, there's something they could have done there, and I'm sure there's plenty of other options as far as festivals go for the areas catered to Virginia and the Carowinds area, and California's Great America as well, and Santa Clara there. There's plenty of things in those areas that they could have catered a festival to, I feel like, to try to draw people out. Even for a weekend or two, it may have helped the attendance, but you got to give people a reason to come back. And I think this all kind of circles back to the limited rides and the weather and just not having much of a reason to go at that point when you know that your experience will be better if you just hold off a little bit. And if you're traveling that far down south for, say, Carowinds or Kingsdominion, why don't you just get the plane ticket and go to Orlando for the full experience of the theme parks, or Tampa Bay for Busch Gardens? It's just one of those things where you start to ask these questions and you start to get these answers where you're like, I kind of see why it doesn't make sense for these parks. But I do think they could have done a few things differently, especially the marketing standpoint of it. Getting some billboards out there, year-round operations, come visit in January. Get the most out of your visits in February. Like, there's plenty of just silly little marketing things they could have done that would have put it in the faces of all of the general guests that show up, more of the enthusiasts, because I know they did create a lot of buzz amongst enthusiasts. Enthusiasts were talking about it quite a bit, but that seems to be the problem with amusement parks and theme parks in general. The enthusiasts create a large buzz, but the money never really returns to the pockets of the companies, which is Cedar Fair in this point, and they're just trying to maximize their operations. And I'm sure running those parks in those months wound up costing them a little more than they wanted to, especially with not a lot of people showing up. There's not a lot of return. So this totally makes sense. What do you guys think about the year-round operations coming to an end at Carowinds in Charlotte, Kingsdominion in Doswell, Virginia, and California's Great America in Santa Clara? I think it's kind of shocking. I think the one and done's a little silly. I think they could have given it a little more of a chance with a little more push behind it, tried the marketing standpoint. It felt like they were like, here's your year-round operations. Oops, sorry, it didn't work like we said. Pull the plug. And I don't necessarily like that, but I totally understand from where they're coming from right now. And as guests, we do too. We got to understand that. Let us know what you think down below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, guys. Leave a comment and have a fantastic coaster off season. I know this is the final weekend for the scare events. Go have yourself a great time. Have a great night, everybody.